African immigrant janitor, insulted at university. Then he became the dean. The sound of footsteps echoed in the empty university hallway. A janitor, wearing a faded uniform and pushing a mop bucket, bent down to clean a stain from the marble floor. Students passed by, some without noticing him at all, others snickering, whispering insults about his accent and his dark skin. What no one knew was that this quiet man carried a secret far greater than his broom and bucket. Behind the humble uniform was a dream, and a fire that would one day change everything. Years later, those same halls would echo with applause, not mockery, as the janitor walked onto the stage, not to clean, but to lead. Before we continue this story, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, make sure to subscribe now. Don't forget to hit the like button and press the bell icon so you never miss our new stories. It began with a man named Samuel Okoro, who came from Nigeria to the United States with nothing but a suitcase and a heart full of ambition. Like many immigrants, his dream was simple yet profound: to create a better life through education and hard work. But dreams often collide with reality. Samuel quickly discovered that opportunities were not handed out freely, especially to men who spoke with a thick accent and whose skin marked him as different. Bills piled up. Employers turned him away. Eventually, desperate for a job to keep a roof over his head, Samuel accepted a position as a janitor at a large and prestigious university. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had once dreamed of walking those same university halls as a student. Instead, he was hired to sweep their floors. Every day, he carried a bucket of cleaning supplies, watching students his age or younger heading to lectures and classrooms he could not afford to enter. The work was grueling, the nights were long, and the humiliation endless. Some students sneered at him, tossing trash deliberately in his path. Professors often passed without acknowledging his existence. To them, he was invisible, nothing more than the janitor. But Samuel was not just a janitor. At night, after finishing his shift, he would sit in the library, reading abandoned textbooks, taking notes in worn-out journals, and teaching himself subjects ranging from philosophy to economics. He was determined not to let the broom in his hand define the destiny in his heart. And while many laughed at him, Samuel knew that patience and persistence would one day silence every voice of doubt. The turning point came slowly, almost invisibly. One evening, after finishing a long shift, Samuel overheard a lecture in an open classroom. The professor spoke passionately about ethics and leadership. Samuel paused, leaning against the doorway, captivated. When the class ended, he crept inside, picked up the discarded notes, and copied them word for word into his notebook. From that day on, it became his ritual. Every night, while others slept, Samuel studied. Math, history, sociology. Nothing escaped his hunger for knowledge. He became friends with the librarians, who quietly allowed him to borrow books after hours. Though his clothes smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals, his mind was filled with visions of progress, justice, and education. But his quiet pursuit of learning didn't remain unnoticed forever. Some students mocked him when they found him buried in books. A janitor with a dictionary, they joked. Others questioned why he even bothered. One day, a wealthy student laughed in front of his friends and said, "Hey janitor, no matter how much you read, you'll never sit in those classrooms." The laughter stung like a blade, but Samuel smiled politely, swallowing the pain. Inside, he promised himself, "One day, I'll prove them wrong." Years went by. Samuel applied for night classes, using nearly all his savings to enroll in one course at a time. He cleaned during the day, studied during the night, and slept barely a few hours. Some professors were astonished at his dedication, others skeptical, but Samuel pressed on. Eventually, he completed his undergraduate degree. But he didn't stop. With the same grit that carried him across oceans, he pursued graduate school. His passion for education was undeniable, and slowly, people began to see him not as the janitor who mopped floors, but as the scholar who rose against all odds. Still, racism lingered. In faculty lounges, whispers followed him. Some doubted his ability to lead because of his background. Others questioned if an African immigrant truly belonged in academia. Every insult, every dismissal, every barrier, Samuel turned into fuel. When a professor unexpectedly passed away mid-semester, the department needed someone to finish the course. To everyone's surprise, Samuel was recommended as a temporary instructor. Nervous but determined, he stepped into the classroom, the same halls where he was once mocked. His voice shook at first, but soon his passion silenced the doubts. Students listened, not because of his title, but because of his wisdom. The janitor was now a teacher. Years of perseverance led Samuel to something few could have imagined. He climbed every academic rung, from instructor to assistant professor, then to full professor. He published papers that were quoted worldwide, mentored students who once thought he was invisible, and became a symbol of hope for immigrant communities. Yet the defining moment came on a summer afternoon, during the university's annual convocation ceremony. The auditorium buzzed with excitement. Faculty in colorful gowns lined the stage, students filled the seats, and parents eagerly awaited the ceremony. Then came the announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Dr. Samuel Okoro. Gasps filled the room. Students who once laughed at him as a janitor now applauded him as their dean. Professors who never spoke his name now shook his hand with respect. Cameras flashed as Samuel walked across the stage, wearing not a janitor's uniform, but the regal robes of leadership. He stood at the podium, remembering the countless nights of mopping floors, the insults, the rejections, and the loneliness. His voice trembled with emotion as he spoke about resilience, dignity, and the power of education. Though he didn't call out names, those who once mocked him knew the truth. The man they looked down upon now stood above them, not out of pride, but out of perseverance. At that moment, Samuel proved something greater than success. He proved that no humiliation, no insult, no act of racism could ever bury the dreams of a determined soul. Samuel's story spread far beyond the university. Newspapers called him the janitor who became the dean. Immigrant families across the city looked to him as proof that their struggles were not in vain. Students who once ignored him now lined up